The city adored him, not because he was the richest man, not because he held the highest office, not because he commanded armies or ruled kingdoms. People admired him because he seemed to possess something far more valuable. Everyone liked him. Merchants trusted him with their business. Politicians sought his advice before making difficult decisions. Artists invited him to private gatherings. Scholars praised his intelligence. Children smiled when they saw him walking through the streets. Servants spoke of his kindness. The wealthy respected his elegance. The poor appreciated his generosity. If someone asked who the finest man in the city was, every answer pointed to the same person. He had become exactly what everyone hoped to become, or so it appeared. Every morning began with another invitation: breakfast with influential merchants, a meeting with city officials, an afternoon among philosophers, dinner inside the homes of noble families. Every room welcomed him. Every conversation needed him. Every gathering somehow felt incomplete until he arrived. He possessed an extraordinary gift. He always knew exactly who people expected him to be. Among scholars, he became thoughtful and intellectual. Among soldiers, disciplined and courageous. Among merchants, ambitious and practical. Among artists, imaginative and sensitive. He never disagreed too strongly, never offended anyone, never revealed more than was safe. People left every conversation believing they had met someone who truly understood them. They never realized they had each met a different version of the same man. Years passed this way. His reputation grew stronger. So did his loneliness. At first, the changes felt harmless. A small adjustment here, a different opinion there. A smile he did not genuinely feel. A compliment he did not truly believe. Tiny compromises, barely noticeable, until the compromises stopped feeling temporary. Eventually, they became his personality, or at least the personality everyone expected. One winter evening, the city hosted its annual masquerade. It was the most prestigious event of the year. Crystal chandeliers illuminated an enormous ballroom. Hundreds of candles reflected across polished marble floors. Music echoed beneath painted ceilings while nobles danced wearing magnificent masks crafted from gold, silver, ivory, and velvet. No one entered without hiding their face. The masquerade celebrated mystery, identity, illusion. The man arrived wearing one of the finest masks in the room. Elegant, perfectly crafted, beautiful enough to attract admiration before he had even spoken. As always, people surrounded him immediately. Compliments flowed effortlessly. Laughter followed him from conversation to conversation. He smiled. He nodded. He adapted, exactly as he always had. Yet beneath the mask, he felt strangely exhausted. At one point, he quietly stepped away from the crowd, seeking nothing more than a few moments of silence. He wandered through a long gallery lined with enormous antique mirrors. Each reflected hundreds of masked guests dancing behind him. For a brief moment, he stopped. He looked directly into one of the mirrors, and a disturbing thought crossed his mind. He recognized the mask. He recognized the clothes. He recognized the smile. But he no longer recognized the person wearing them. The realization unsettled him. Before he could gather his thoughts, he noticed something impossible. Among hundreds of guests, one man wore no mask at all. An elderly traveler stood alone beside a tall window overlooking the snow-covered city. He showed no interest in the music, no interest in the celebration, no interest in being noticed. He simply watched the snow fall in complete silence. The man approached him, unable to hide his curiosity. "Everyone here is wearing a mask." The old traveler smiled gently. "I notice. Then why aren't you wearing one?" The traveler looked calmly toward the dancers filling the ballroom, then answered with quiet certainty. "Because I spent my life trying to remove mine." The music suddenly seemed very far away. The ballroom continued dancing. The laughter continued echoing beneath the chandeliers. But for the first time that evening, the man heard only silence. The old traveler finally turned toward him. His eyes carried neither judgment nor admiration, only understanding. Then he spoke once more. "Tell me, when was the last time you met the man beneath your own mask?" The question froze him where he stood. He searched for an answer, None came. The old traveler extended his hand. "My name," he said quietly, "is Friedrich Nietzsche." The music continued. Crystal chandeliers bathed the ballroom in warm golden light, while couples danced effortlessly across the polished marble floor. Laughter echoed from every corner of the hall. Nothing had changed, and yet somehow everything had, because one question had quietly entered the man's mind. When was the last time you met the man beneath your own mask? The masquerade continued long into the night. Guests complimented him. Nobles invited him into new conversations. Artists praised his taste. Merchants admired his judgment. As always, he smiled. He laughed. He answered exactly as each person expected. Yet something felt different. For the first time, he noticed it. Every conversation required a different version of himself. With the politicians, he became cautious. With the philosophers, he became profound. With the wealthy, he became refined. With old friends, he carefully repeated opinions they expected to hear. He no longer spoke naturally. He performed. The realization unsettled him. When the final dance ended and the guests slowly disappeared into the snowy streets, he found Nietzsche standing alone beneath one of the enormous mirrors. Neither man spoke. The silence itself seemed to ask questions. Finally, the man broke it. "You think I've been pretending?" Nietzsche looked toward the empty ballroom. "No, I think you've been surviving." The answer caught him off guard. He frowned. "There's a difference." "There is," Nietzsche replied quietly. "A lie is something you tell other people. A mask is something you eventually tell yourself." The ballroom suddenly felt much larger. The man looked around at the hundreds of abandoned masks resting upon polished tables. Beautiful, elegant, yet completely empty. Nietzsche walked slowly toward one of them. He lifted it into his hands. "Do you know why masks are dangerous?" The man shook his head. "Because they fit better every day." The words settled into silence. The man could not argue, because he remembered. As a young boy, he spoke whatever he believed. He laughed without wondering who approved. He disagreed without fearing rejection. He dreamed without asking permission. Somewhere along the journey, that person had quietly disappeared. Not all at once. One compromise at a time. One expectation at a time. One performance at a time. The following days became strangely uncomfortable. The man's life continued exactly as before. Breakfast meetings, public speeches, private dinners, social gatherings. Nothing outside had changed, but now he noticed something he had never seen before. Every room demanded a different version of him. Every person expected a different personality. Every compliment rewarded a different performance. One afternoon, while visiting an influential merchant, he enthusiastically praised a risky business idea he secretly believed would fail. Later that evening, during dinner with scholars, he confidently defended a philosophical position he no longer agreed with. The next morning, he comforted an old friend with advice he himself had never followed. Each interaction felt successful. Each interaction left him feeling strangely empty. That evening, he returned to the ballroom. Now abandoned, only candles remained burning softly beneath the enormous chandeliers. Nietzsche stood before the largest mirror in the hall, waiting. The man approached him. "I don't know who I am anymore." The confession echoed quietly through the empty room. Nietzsche nodded. "I know." The man looked into the mirror. "I've spent so many years becoming what everyone admired that I no longer know what I actually believe." The philosopher stepped beside him. For several moments, both men simply looked into the reflection. Then Nietzsche asked one final question, not with accusation, not with disappointment, only curiosity. "Remove every title. Remove every compliment. Remove every expectation. Remove every role you perform for other people." He turned toward the man. "Who remains?" The ballroom became perfectly still. Outside, snow continued falling across the sleeping city. Inside, the most admired man in the city searched desperately for an answer. He found none. And in that silence, he realized something more frightening than failure. He had spent so much of his life becoming the person everyone else wanted that he had never taken the time to become himself. Snow continued falling over the city. By morning, rooftops, streets, and silent gardens had disappeared beneath a blanket of white. Inside the grand ballroom, the music had long since faded. The candles had burned low. The masks remained scattered across polished marble floors like forgotten identities abandoned after a lifetime of pretending. Nothing had changed. And yet, somehow everything had, because something had shifted, not within the city, not within the people who continued admiring the man they believed they knew, but within the man himself. For the first time in many years, he no longer wanted to be admired. He wanted to be real. He entered the empty ballroom alone. No orchestra, no nobles, no conversations demanding another performance, only silence. He slowly walked toward the largest mirror in the room, the same mirror where he had first realized he no longer recognized himself. A single mask rested on the table beside it, the beautiful mask everyone had admired the night before. He picked it up carefully, turning it in his hands. How strange, he thought. People had praised the mask, believed the mask, trusted the mask, and little by little, so had he. Behind him, Friedrich Nietzsche quietly entered the ballroom. Neither man spoke. Words were no longer necessary. The man looked into the mirror one final time. Then, with calm hands, he placed the mask back upon the table, not with anger, not with regret, but with understanding. For years, he believed the mask had protected him from rejection, protected him from criticism, protected him from disappointment. Now he understood its true cost. It had also protected the world from ever meeting him. A long silence filled the room. Finally, he turned toward Nietzsche. What happens now? The philosopher walked beside him. He looked toward the empty dance floor where hundreds of people had spent years pretending to be someone else for a single evening. Then he quietly answered, "Now, you disappoint some people." The man smiled faintly. "And after that, you lose the admiration of those who only loved your performance." The smile disappeared. "And after that," Nietzsche looked directly into his eyes, "you finally meet yourself." The words settled over the ballroom like the final note of a symphony. Outside, the snow continued falling without asking who approved of it, without trying to impress anyone. It simply became what it already was. The man understood. Authenticity was never about becoming someone new. It was about removing everything that was never truly his. He walked toward the great ballroom doors. As he reached them, voices echoed from the entrance hall. Guests had begun arriving for another celebration, another evening of elegant masks, another night of beautiful performances. A servant hurried toward him carrying the same magnificent mask he had worn every year. "My lord, you forgot this." The man looked at it quietly. For a long moment, he simply smiled. Then, he gently closed the servant's hands around it. Someone else may need it. He stepped outside into the falling snow. Barefaced, the cold wind touched his skin. For the first time in years, it felt honest. Behind him, the ballroom filled once again with music, laughter, and carefully chosen identities. Ahead of him, only quiet streets stretched into the white morning. Nietzsche remained standing in the doorway, watching silently. Then, before turning away, he spoke one final sentence. "The heaviest mask is not the one you wear. It is the one you forget you are wearing." The ballroom doors slowly closed. The music disappeared. The city continued exactly as it always had. Most people would spend another day becoming who they believed others wanted them to be. But one man walked through the falling snow with nothing left to perform. He had lost admiration. He had lost certainty. He had lost the person everyone expected. And somehow, that was the first day he had truly become free. Because the greatest achievement is not becoming the person the world applauds. It is becoming the person you no longer have to pretend to be.